Happy New Year, Coasters. Malzillasode here with a special edition of Sonic Hosts Coast to Coast in our first ever Rewind Flash Forward episode, in which we look back on the state of the Sonic franchise in 2025 and hopefully figure out what the hell's going to happen in 2026. So, before we go forward into the new year, let's take a rewind and look at the year before that preceded us in 2025. But before that, let's rewind even further to December of 2024. We have ourselves the pretty much the apex climax of the Year of Shadow, which saw the release of Sonic X Shadow Generations, and more importantly, the release of Sonic Movie 3, which darn near made almost $500 million at the box office. But 2025 does pretty much start in 2024 at the 2024 VGAs, in which we saw the first teaser for the video game that would be announced 2 months later as Sonic Racing Crossworlds, which is also where we're going to start off. Sonic Racing Crossworlds has been Sonic's latest addition to the racing genre. Sonic's got a bit of a racing past between the Riders series, the Drift series, and the All-Star Transformed and Team Sonic racing games. Crossworlds has been met with pretty much solid fanfare. Fans were not too thrilled with the price, especially when you tag on the DLC for the third-party characters, being video game franchises such as Minecraft, Pac-Man, and Mega Man, and then Sega's partnership with Paramount Global, some of their more family franchises such as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, SpongeBob SquarePants, and the Avatar series. Not the James Cameron Avatar, but the good Avatar, Aang and Korra. Also announced was a bunch of free, unpaid DLCs, which basically they will give out free. These so far have been characters such as Hatsune Miku, I believe it's Ichiban from the Like a Dragon Yakuza series, Joker from Persona, and most recently Knights from Nights into Dreams. We do know that AE from Super Monkey Ball will be coming, as well as making their pretty much mainline game debut. Not officially, let's not call it mainline, but mainline adjacent game. Tangle and Whisper will be joining the rosters. These are the first Sonic characters DLCs, and them making the jump from mobile games such as Sonic Forces Speed Battle and Sonic Rumble, which we'll talk more about shortly, to the mainline games. Thus, also pretty much hinting that when the next mainline game comes out, they'll probably show up as too. So people are excited. The game is fine. I think it probably does lack a little bit of a single player mode. Online mode is fun. We've done some streams here on the channel and the Discord. You've seen me and Piggy Bank race it out a few times. Again, whenever you see us, if you have it, please feel free to welcome to join, play with us. But yeah, Crossworlds hasn't sold quite the way they wanted it, according to some reports, but for the most part, it's doing pretty well. Shifting off the mainline games, we're going to switch over to mobile games. Now, Sonic Rumble was advertised and announced in 2024, if my memory serves me correct, because I do remember seeing advertisements in the theaters for it before Sonic Movie 3, but it didn't get released till late November 2025 on a worldwide release. They had done a slow beta, and they had released a bunch of content. It's Sonic Rumbles. It's their Fall Guys clone. I really had no intention of playing it, just because it's I can pass. Not for me. Big whoop. Until Rovio and Sega decided to say, hey, that Godzilla Sonic crossover you've been wanting? And I'm like, yeah, are you gonna do a comic? We're like, no, but we're bringing him to Rumble. And I'm just like, You sons of bitches, I'm in. So I've been playing that a lot. It's actually pretty decent sized DLC event. To have a fun little level where Godzilla pops out of the water and attacks the boats you're on. It's the way Rumble is featured. You have basically three quote unquote races. The first one is the first 14, 16 to get to the cross the finish line, and the second one's usually kind of an elimination type, reduce it again in half. So Godzilla's blasting people off the little boats. I got to give it props because it's a fun little event, little stage. But the fact that they threw some cameos of Shakiris, which for those in not the Godzilla know, is a really obscure Easter egg to 1984's The Return of Godzilla, also known as Godzilla 1985 in the U.S. Shakirises are these sea lice that fed on Godzilla and mutated and attacked some people on a boat. So, fun little Easter egg pullback. I'm actually kind of also surprised the fact, besides a free Godzilla skin, if you buy the pass, as all these games, free to play games have, there's a bunch of microtransactions. You can get a Ghidorah skin with his gravity beams. You get a Mechagodzilla 3, aka Kiryu, with his Absolute Zero Canyon. And kind of the surprise meme of it is they brought in Destroya with his laser horn variable slicer move, and according to the trailer, he's coming after Charmy B. So you got a literal hydrogen, well, not so much a hydrogen bomb, but the oxygen destroyer versus coughing baby B. So that was fun. It spawned a lot of fun art. It's also really interesting because Godzilla's been a case in the past where Toho's basically, you don't get a group license for the characters. You gotta license each character individually. So I think they've changed it. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't have gotten, the four skins plus the Rodan and Mothra buddies. So, decent amount of kaiju that they pulled. And who knows, we might get more in the future. So, Rumble's been going pretty well. They're doing these little events. As I kind of mentioned, it's a free-to-play game. And usually with free-to-play, you get a lot of microtransactions, which some kind of, depending on who you are, can be a little frustrating. Like, for example, the Destroya and Mechagodzilla 3 Kiryu skins, they're like 775 red rings, which is about $45 to $50, and sort of hell ain't worth that unless you really want to grind all that. But it is, it's just kind of necessary evils. Just you kind of accept it. So Rumble seems to be going strong. I'm curious to see what future collabs they do with that, but we'll kind of talk more about that in 2026. Also, again, speaking of mobile games, Speed Battle is still plugging along, new characters, new skins. Not really much going on there. Also, in 2025, Sonic Blitz was announced. When initially the copyright came through, most folks thought it was kind of we thought it was going to be a soccer game, but it turned out to be a Sonic mobile card game, which everyone's like, all right, whatever, until we all kind of looked into the source code and found names of characters we had thought long cast into the void of the Sega Vault. From some of the initial descriptions from the open betas in countries such as Brazil and the Philippines, this is supposedly a game to honor the entire history of Sonic the Hedgehog, including a few television series and maybe comic runs from the 90s and 2000s that some fans really are hoping, and characters that we're rallying to see again. So, fingers crossed, nothing set in stone yet, but could be a way to see Sally, the Freedom Fighters, and even Sonic and Mania from Underground back. So, we'll keep an eye on that. And that's pretty much runs the gamut of the video games for 2025. Shifting into alternate media, which honestly seems to be where Sonic has the most success. Let's look at comic books. Obviously, IDW, they're continuing their road to 100. They only put like 9 issues, including the annual. The annual was good. That was a fun little 30th anniversary of Chaotix, written by Daniel Barnes, introducing a new villain, Enigma the Jackal. Whereas back to the main book, we kind of wrapped up the few issues post the Clean Sweep Grand Prix. We did away with Mimic, at least for now, and Evan launched the new arc, which I just did a video on. You can check about the, Sonic and Tails meeting Soleil/Lunar, and listen to me rant about my frustrations with that arc and kind of IDW in general. But IDW Sonic wasn't the only Sonic comics released this year. We also saw the first phase of the Sonic DC Justice League collab. Ian Flynn wrote the 5-issue miniseries published by DC because, DC's not going to let, IDW publish Batman and Superman. But that was really fun. We here on the channel did 2 videos with Chevelle, kind of as a guest star. Chevelle Radry and I all reviewed issue 1, and then Chevelle and I kind of reviewed and talked over the rest as well as possible things to see down the line. Now, when initially announced in 2024, this collab between DC and Sonic, they did mention it would go into 2026, and we've started to see some of the... In December, we saw some nuggets of possible leaks for new Sonic collab toys. Now, obviously, the big thing was various members of Sonic Cast taking on Justice League personas: Shadow Batman, Knuckles Superman, Sonic Flash, Amy Wonder Woman, Tails Cyborg, Silver Green Lantern. Looks like in this next phase, we're going to see Aquaman Big, Lex Luthor Superman, which kind of go figures, how the first miniseries went, as well as seeing Starfire Blaze and Catwoman Rouge. So we might see more, but those are the only, those are the official leaks that came out earlier this year for toys. And for the most part, that pretty much all sums it up 2025 in the comics. Moving on to movies and TVs. Again, pretty much coming, especially after, the release of Sonic 3 in December of 2024. Unfortunately, Sonic 3 was snubbed for a nomination for this year's VGAs for Best Adaptation. My guessing is that kind of since it came out in the last couple of weeks of 2024 and before 2025, it got kind of caught in that dead zone where they probably just forgot about it, which is a shame because, again, almost made $500 million. Certainly, better than the Minecraft movie. Though, sadly, not as, financially successful. Also surprising a lot, but not really if we'd been paying attention, Paramount announced that in December of 2028, a Sonic Cinematic Universe movie, not Sonic 4, will be released. Now, we've all been signs have been pointing to this being the much talked about Shadow project that has been basically rumored about since basically Sonic 2 came out. So, we'll see how that goes. All that together pretty much sums up 2025 for Sonic. Now that we've gone back, let's look forward to 2026. Now, again, starting off in the games. Sadly, we did not get any tease for the next mainline game at the 2025 VGAs, but that might not necessarily mean there's no mainline game coming out this year. If you've kind of noticed in the last couple of years, they kind of like to announce things in the early part of the year, February-ish, for a fall release. I know Azuka mentioned that they kind of teased Frontiers a little earlier than they expected. Now, this year is the 35th anniversary of Sonic, and also the 20th anniversary of Sonic 06, so take that with how you will. So, they'll have something released. I just don't know what. That being said, I could totally see the next mainline game being announced this year and coming out in 2027. Obviously, and hopefully piggyback off the hype for Sonic Movie 4, which is obviously in production right now. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. So, mainline game, the next one, the Frontiers follow up, nothing. We know it's in production. It'll be announced sooner or later, I think. Sonic Sega has also kind of, for the most part, done some re-releases and collections. It is possible they could do that. I have heard rumors and whispers of Unleashed being re-released, which would be kind of fun. You know, it's one of those games that's not readily available. I've heard possible like re-releases, masters of that, especially because a lot of those levels are wearing crossworlds, so there might be a little synergy there. And I've heard possibilities of Amy side campaigns and Knuckles side campaigns similar to the Shadow side campaign in Sonic X Shadow Generations. I am curious, though, the one thing that gives me pause of that actually happening is the fact that Sonic Unleashed and pretty much Sonic the Black Knight were the last, well, aside for Mike Pollock, who still continued to voice Eggman, that was the last round of the 4Kids cast. So, you know, Jason Griffith was voicing Sonic at the time. And, you know, we're pretty much for the last decade and a half now been with Roger. So I'd be curious if they would just keep the dialogue, or would they just, you know, how much they'd have to pay royalties to the old cast, or would it just be cheaper to redub with the current cast? So we'll see how that plays out, if that does come to fruition. They could release Sonic Lost World, but I don't think anyone would care about to see the Zeddy again. Sorry, Zeddy fans. I know there's a few of you, but yeah. Though I do think Sonic 06 is the one game that they should remake, remaster. Also heard possible things about Sonic Heroes, but again, that kind of falls into, do you redub the game or do you just re-release it with the old voice cast? We'll see. Moving into the mobile games, obviously Sonic Rumble, it will still going, and we'll see what kind of collabs will come out. Last year, a supposed kind of it's not really an internal document, but a sheet of kind of proposed crossover franchises for Sega to do with Sonic, and some of its games like Crossworlds and Rumble that they'd be able to do collabs with. They kind of looked at both domestic and international franchise. Now, since this is a Sega, and for most part, a Sega point of view, domestic would be Japanese franchises, so anime, manga, obviously the big names like Dragon Ball, Sailor Moon, Gundam was on, Super Sentai, Ultraman, so obviously, you know, they've done Godzilla, so some of those kind of make sense. They had Saint Seiya on it, which is probably the most popular anime most Americans have never heard of. It's huge in Latin America and parts of Europe. It's also one of my personal faves, so I'd be down for it. Then they look at international franchise, which of course would be more Western franchises such as Disney, Marvel, Transformers. They also had the Minions, which, dear God, I hope not. But yeah, we'll see how things pan out. I'm pretty sure they've had success with this Godzilla, you know, little crossover event that's still going on. We'll probably see one or two more down the road. Sonic Speed Battle will probably continue to add characters and skins. Maybe we'll see more comic characters. Maybe we'll see more classic characters. You know, we haven't seen Fang or Trip or the other hooligans or Honey the Cat or Starline, so who knows? They could probably add a few more there. Though I got to give that game credit for lasting as long as it has, because that was a promotion game for Forces in 2017, and here we are, 2025 or 2026, I should say. And then again, Sonic Blitz. Again, it's currently kind of in testing beta alpha in select countries like the Philippines and Brazil. I would expect this would be a good game to release this year. So keep an eye out on Twitter for anything Sonic Blitz. I could feel that they probably want to release that sometime this year after an official announcement. And that kind of, and then of course we also have Crossworlds. We are about halfway through their initial free DLC as well as the paid DLC. They seem to be keen in keeping the support for this game going, so hopefully that means more tracks, possible a season 2 of DLC characters and maps. Again, you could look at some of those franchises such as like DC. They could go with their current partners like DC. I mean, they did make a Shadow Batmobile toy, so we may see DC if they continue to do that. And yeah, that's about kind of what's going on there. So a lot of kind of going, just keep it going with maybe some announcements for either things to come out later this year toward the holidays, or save it till next year. Going back into comics, obviously IDW is again continuing on its road to 100. They're going to be starting off this year with a Sage's debut into the comics. Some fans' feathers were ruffled when it released that the comics, as of right now, are past Frontiers, and fans have been trying to piece, when does Frontiers fit into the current arc's timelines? But regardless, according to the powers that be, we're in past Frontiers now. We are in the now. We are no longer in the post-Forces pre-Frontiers phase. We are post-Frontiers, and Sage will be teaming up with Sonic and Bell to find a Warrant Metal Sonic. I am looking forward to reading this arc. I do like Sage. I'm looking forward to seeing her debut in the comics. I'm not a huge fan of Belle. She's probably my least favorite IDW original character, but seeing the two daughters of Eggman kind of interacting should be fun to see. Otherwise, I don't know where they'll go from there. Obviously, they'll probably dive into who the mysterious figure that has been collecting the Chaos Emeralds and what's up with that coffin container they're carrying on their back, and we'll see if it's in fact Starline or not. Again, also we should probably suspect the announcement for Sonic Justice League, DC miniseries 2 from DC. If they haven't announced it yet, so my guessing probably in the next month for a fall release. I've heard possible rumors that instead of being called Chaos Crisis, Chaos Crisis, which was the first one, this one might be called World's Fastest, which is a pun on the Batman Superman books, which together they are known as World's Finest. World's Fastest would obviously be, in relation to Sonic and Flash, and who is the fastest thing alive. So, again, hopefully we'll get that announced soon and some dates, and I guarantee you I will be back to cover that. I'm pretty sure Chevelle will be, and we'll see if Radri's interested in joining with us there. And that's pretty much all it is on the comic front. Last but not least, movie TV. I've heard rumors possibly that maybe Warner Brothers is entertaining the idea of doing an animated adaptation of that first Sonic DC crossover, which was something I was hoping for because, Warner Brothers DC has been one of the few companies to actually do animated features, at least, to streaming and or, direct to DVD. Though with the whole Netflix buying Warner Brothers, who knows? Maybe that got tossed. We'll find out. Again, for television, obviously Sonic 4 will, it's in current production now. I think they begin filming probably late spring, early summer. Again, this is probably going to be more of a CG heavy film, just because now that we got Amy and Metal Sonic, and a lot of the human characters are starting to their roles are getting decreased, so they probably don't need to film as much as they used to, especially compared to like movies 1 and 2. Yeah, even 3 didn't have a whole lot going. It's pretty much Jim Carrey, and that was about it. But we don't know if Jim Carrey's back. Hopefully, we'll learn soon. CinemaCon is in April, and that's the big movie industry's kind of floor show, trade show with the Theater Owners Guild of America to kind of say, hey, here's the things that are coming out this year and next year. Hopefully, they might shed some light on that Sonic Universe film in 2028 and maybe confirm that if that is, in fact, the Shadow film that we all seem to think it is. So, really, that sums up kind of what's going to happen in 2026. They could do some. We didn't get to Sonic Central in 2025, so they could do another one of those, throw off some more collabs of apparel and bling and whatnot. It is an anniversary year, so I expect them to do something. And again, it is the 20th anniversary of Sonic 06, so 20 years of Silver the Hedgehog, Princess Elise, Mephiles, aka Me-Files, Memphis, Tennessee, and so on and so forth. So we could see some things honoring that. Again, I'd think a remake, remaster a la the Final Fantasy VII games would be super fun for Sonic 06, but that's just me. But I think collectively 2026 is going to be kind of a slower year. We're going to see kind of more auxiliary stuff. And then maybe 2027 they ramp things up, obviously, since Sonic 4 will be coming out in the early spring, a week before Godzilla X Kong Supernova. So, I'm going to have a busy weekend that weekend watching film. But again, just want to thank all of you for sitting around, listening to me yap for about 20 minutes, almost 30 minutes at this point, speculating on what could happen down the road and kind of looking back on what worked and what didn't. Again, feel free to please join our Discord. If you'd like to follow us on socials for updates, you can as well. Again, we do little Rumble parties and crossworld parties and chit-chat about this, that, and whatever. We'd love to have you join us. And until next time, this is Malzilla. Once again, I'll stomp you later, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.